Hi, I'm Miss Moran and welcome to our M328 Learning and Assessment Information video. In this video, I'm going to go through some information with you about our class and how I focus on learning and talk about grades and assessments. I will focus on learning long before I will talk to you about grades. That's because I believe that learning comes before grades. I want you to imagine this is your progress report. In these 3 courses, you earned B's. All of them have the same value. They're all a B. Now don't worry, I don't want you to think my expectations are that you're going to get B's or that B's are good enough. Some of you are sweating right now. I want you to think about this situation for my example. That's all. So here you are staring at the B's. I wonder what your thoughts are. Well, are you wondering, how did I get those B's? What was the math that was behind those grades? So let's take a look at the 3 situations. In science, you got a B. You knew 68% of the content, but you did 100% of your homework and you participated regularly. In your social studies class, you knew 100% of the content, but you only did 50% of the homework and earned not as many participation points. In your Algebra 2 class, your teacher says you did 85% of the content proficiently, and you got these comments: participates, practices content regularly, and comes in for help when needed. Now, all 3 of these grades were a B, but they were calculated 3 different ways. Do you know how your grades are calculated? I'm going to show you how we do it in my class. And then we're going to talk about why this is such a big deal. With the first example, 68% of the content was understood, but you did 100% of the material or the homework, and you participated. So, what's wrong with this? You got a B, that's good enough, right? Yeah, but you don't know 2 of the major concepts. So, the issue with this is that the homework grade helped you so much that it hid the fact that you don't understand some of the material. In our second example, you knew all of the material, but you didn't do all the homework, or maybe you didn't participate in class. Does that seem right? How do you feel about that? And in the third example, you knew 85% of the material. That's right, look at those 4 numbers, they average to 85%. And you were told that you participate regularly, practice your content regularly, and you come in for help when you need to. These are important things. Your coach wants to know them, your parent wants to know them, your counselor wants to know that, and maybe your college someday is going to want to know that. But they also want to know how much you learned. And this shows that you know 85% of the material. But wait, I'm going to tell you that averaging is actually going to pose another concern. What issue would you think? Well, look here. These 2 students both averaged to 85%, so they would both earn that B in Algebra 2. However, the second student, the one on the right, doesn't know factoring very well at all, or you might even say they don't know it at all, because they got a 50% of that standard learned. So I would say that averaging actually hides when you don't know something. So now I want you to imagine a checklist for success. Not only success in this class, but also in future classes. The list is going to consist of learning standards. Those are different concepts: academic behavioral skills and life skills, all of which are very important. If you have a deficit in a content area that is going to most easily lead to future success, it might repair itself over time. But math teachers often see that having these deficits debilitates and often paralyzes students from moving forward and finding the success they want to. So to address this, I'm going to categorize our learning standards as primary and secondary. The primary standards are required to be learned for a passing grade. The decision of primary and secondary standards, as in which is which, was based on a few things. One was that the concepts that were most applicable to later units and later classes. And I also spoke to our AP Calculus teachers and asked them what their students currently have as deficiencies. That way I could prepare this year's students to be better at those concepts. This is what made up our primary versus secondary standards. In our course, we have 7 primary standards and 5 secondary standards, along with a problem-solving standard each semester. The students, you guys, need to reach proficiency on 7 primary standards each semester to earn a C. And then how well you do on your secondary standards will determine whether or not you get a B or an A. If you meet proficiency on all 12 of your standards, then you will receive a B or an A. Going to address this. Points about points. Assigning points can be well thought out by teachers, but they are still arbitrarily assigned to each problem. Do you ever wonder why one problem is worth 5 points and another problem is worth 3 points? Well, it makes a big difference when you may not know that 5-point question or may not have remembered what to put down for that 5-point question versus the 3-point question. So I believe that they are arbitrarily assigned to each problem, even though your teacher spends time planning out how much points to give each problem. Deducting points for partial credit can also be done very carefully by teachers, but it's often inconsistent. And points at the top of a page distract students from taking the next step in learning. I want you to think about that. When a teacher's hand back papers, what's the first thing you look at? Is it areas you can improve? Or is it the score and the grade and the percentage at the top of the paper? That means you're not focusing on what you need to be improved so that you can do better the next time. Learning should not be a collection of points. It should be about obtaining and demonstrating understanding. In my class, we will not have any points on any assignment or any test. On your summative assessments, which is a test or at the end of a unit or for your final exam, you will receive these marks. An A or a B says that you understand it, that you have met, reached, or exceeded proficiency by showing evidence of understanding. A C or a D means you don't quite have it yet and that you've not met proficiency, and evidence is inconsistent in demonstrating understanding. An F shows me that there is very little evidence of making progress towards reaching proficiency on that standard. And of course, if you have an incomplete, it's just telling me that you have not assessed the standard. There will be multiple standards on each of your assessments. That means that on a quiz, there could be 1 to 3 different standards being assessed at a time, and on a test, there can be anywhere between 2 to 5 standards being assessed. You will receive one of these grades, A, B, C, D, F, or incomplete, on each of the standards. What does it look like on the assessment? Well, we're going to start by looking at the assessment cycle for our class. Students practice lessons in and outside of class. That sounds pretty typical. Well, then you're going to take a formative checkpoint. This is like a quiz, and you're going to receive feedback from me. I'm going to write words, ask you questions, prompt you to look elsewhere, and make you think about the work that you've shown me. You will not receive a score on a quiz. You will be scoring yourself using that chart with the A, B, C, D, F on it to assign yourself a score. Students will then review the errors they made and practice the areas that they need to. Students will take a summative assessment. Remember, that's your test, and you will receive a score from me on each of the standards that were being tested. If you score less than a C, I'm recommending that you revisit the concepts with support, and you will be allowed to retest. After retesting, students should check with the teacher to see if the score has increased. Usually this will happen about 2 days later. Because the concepts are so important, students do need to learn them. In my opinion, I'm going to say it again, in my opinion, moving a student to the next course without the understanding of the important concepts from the current course is irresponsible. I do not want to put you in a position where you move on to the next course not ready to be successful there. So I'm going to keep working with you while you are in my class for 180 school days to help you learn everything you need to learn about our Algebra 2 course so that you are prepared for the next year in school. So I'm sure you're wondering if effort counts in our grade. Well, effort's important. Hard work is important. Learning is also important. And it is possible that you may not learn without putting in effort and hard work. But your grade in this class will be based solely on what you learn. If a student is willing to learn, they can reach any grade they want. That is, the student learns, then the grade follows. Please leave any comments or questions that you have on our Schoology discussion, and we will be able to talk about them together online or when I see you next in class. I can't wait to spend the next 180 days learning with you and helping you find the most success you can in our Algebra 2 class. Let's have a great year together.